Welcome back, and this is video 3 of the Discovery Center. I may have to apologize in advance. This is probably also one of the more technical videos. It gets into really the weeds of how we built the framework for the conversation and really layered in all the details. The slide that you're looking at here really just is designed to give you kind of a perspective of what was involved for this project and the different things that I was managing. I basically had Roddy Graham was my development project manager. Basically oversaw all the construction and security and delivery of all the infrastructure we needed. So, if you will, the physical aspects of the Discovery Center. The communication consultant ended up being a partnership between BrightDoor, who provided their suite of software applications, all delivered through the internet, and a group called the Whitlock Group out of the Raleigh-Durham area. And so basically I had responsibility for overseeing all of this. What's only thing that's missing on here is internally a fair amount of work that was going on between myself and our marketing director, Sean Cullen, in terms of branding, in terms of some of the key aspects we had readied for the public relations and the advertising campaign to launch the Discovery Center. But what I want to do in this segment is really go through the details of the message and how we would get the message right, and then how it would parlay into the technologies. So basically in the next 5 to 7 minutes we're going to go through a series of Visio slides where you can see the level of detail to support each application and each conversation. So obviously this is Visio, and I have a series of conversation pieces in here, but it does still go back to the beginning of what were the key goals that we were trying to accomplish. What did we want the Discovery Center to become, which we've covered. How do we take this interesting idea of creating a town and put it into a context of questions that people would maybe thirst to learn more about. And you'll see that through Bright Guide in just a minute, but basically trying to spawn conversations with people and creating this opportunity to make the place interesting and compelling where you would want to come back and learn more. So again, a little bit repetitive from the earlier video, but it was something that was very important to us. Then as we look at this slide here, basically we get into this idea of menu-driven activities and then sort of map and visually driven. And the idea behind that is you can have pictures, which are fine, and they tell a story across a range of ideas. But people are also very map-oriented. People love maps. They like to go through them and dig into details embedded within maps and more visually explore things that way. And so really this just starts the beginning process of asking the questions. What is Camana Bay? And by asking that question, there's a series of subtopics. So what is the vision of the place, new urbanism, the development team, the timeline. So from the beginning, back in, some might argue, early 1990s, official groundbreaking was 2005 up through today, building that chronology and tracking it. And then going through this idea of this question of what can I do there? And exploring all the different topical areas that you could go through. Again, it's a series of steps when you're putting together this technology, and so we had to ask some basic questions, come up with subchapters, and then go into further details, which you'll see here in a second. Then from a mapping perspective, I always find it's important. You got to start at the most macro, and you got to start at either map of the world or get into the geography of our region. And then from our region down to the Cayman Islands, then down to Grand Cayman, and then Camana Bay, and then within Camana Bay its subsets. And so again, you just have to lay this out so we know how to put it in terms of details later. In this area where we sort of take out those subchapters, they also have additional layers. So when we talk about the town vision, a way that we can sort of illustrate our mission and our cornerstones about community and lifelong learning, what we're trying to do from a sustainability perspective. And then we hired a documentary film company about a year ago to come up with a series of videos that also support those sort of topics. So that's also in here. And then with New Urbanism, again, I'm not going to read all of these, but it just gives you an idea of sort of the breakdown, the process that we had to go through. So what is Camana Bay? Big question. What can I do there? Second big question. Subtopics, more details. And again, these all play out when we get into the next round of the presentation. And so what we looked at is you have these questions. Now we need to put those into the technologies. And the first technology was BrightGuide. Showed it to you in the first video, but basically framing this idea of 4 or 5 key questions that you could ask people. What is Camana Bay? How do you design a town? Sort of this thing I call just for fun, just sort of factoids that are interesting, and of course, what can you do there? And then borrowing some other examples that Bright Door shared with me from some other places, just sort of making sure that first screen was interactive and it was interesting, it would draw you in and make you want to ask more questions. And then we looked at some of the process flows from some other projects that we felt was relevant. So that is BrightGuide. Again, BrightGuide is the self-learning tool. You provide pictures and enough text to keep people captivated, but it doesn't replace, it does replace the need for a salesperson or a concierge. So it's something where somebody can self-learn. Brightshow, on the other hand, is more of a storytelling tool for concierge and salespeople. And the idea is it really has sort of 3 threads. There's the present mode, which is a series of chapters, and each chapter has relevant content underneath it. Might just be pictures, it could be videos. Often there's no text, so it's important for there to be sort of a logic to it. And then it just really requires the sales team and the concierge team to really learn it, trust it, and know where the content is within it. Then the mapping piece, which I've sort of already talked about. So region down to Camana Bay and then within Camana Bay. And then the library mode is the catch-all, and this can have any aspect of content you can imagine. We started, for example, a nursery here about 10 to 15 years ago. And most people won't walk through the door and say, hey, tell me about your nursery, but you certainly do find individuals who have green thumbs that want to know why we did it, what's at the nursery today, and it's a fascinating story within itself. But we may not put it up in the present mode as one of the automatic things you talk about, although we probably should. Anyhow, this just gives the framework now for Brightshow. Taking it a little step further, we had to get into the flow of Brightshow, and what this is showing is these are the chapters within present mode: Town Vision, New Urbanism, Team, and then you have a series of sub-steps underneath it. Then it gets really fun where you have to go through and actually pick the order of the graphics and the pictures you want to present. And so I'm just showing you sort of one example of a scenario. This one was the scenario of New Urbanism and the ordering of the pictures. And the great thing about this is it's never in concrete. It's very fluid. We've changed this up a million times since we started. But this was just really to offer the framework of how we went about it, using Visio to sort of outline it. And then you've seen the final end product of that, which I demonstrated in the first video, but this sort of gives you hopefully a little more appreciation of how we got to that point. So that sort of concludes the chapter on the development side, and then what we're going to look at now is the actual delivery of the center and some interesting things around that.